Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. It's Ross E. Smith here. Welcome to Battle Plan. We've got a very special guest today. This guy has flown at the speed of sound, ladies and gentlemen. He's incredibly dynamic. He used to fly helicopters and fast jets, and he was actually part and parcel of the initial airborne insertion launching from the HMS Ocean all the way into the Al-faw Peninsula as part of the UK and American combined assault in the Iraq conflict. He's also part and parcel, or has been part and parcel, of search and rescue up in the Scotland Highlands. And, just in his spare time, he's an advanced skydiving instructor. It's quite boring, his life, to be quite honest. He's massively involved in releasing performance from other people. And do you know what? That wasn't enough for this guy. He also developed a property business alongside his military career. And this year alone, he's looking at turning over £500,000. That business is something that he's now sharing with other people through his own business, which he'll talk about during this podcast. And he's also looking to help other military service personnel to achieve the same things as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rich Liddle.
Good morning, Ross. How are we doing?
I'm good, thank you, bud. Really appreciate you coming on.
No worries.
You've got an incredible story. I'm excited to hear. I know a little bit about it because we've known each other a short while, but I'm sure the listeners will be really keen to hear. How the hell have you done it?
Well, to be honest, Ross, it was one of those things that it's taken a long time. You know, it's not an overnight thing, and I think a lot of people these days are trying to better themselves and expecting that overnight success. But you know, any overnight success, what people don't see is the 30 years of graft that's gone before. And yeah. It's all about setting those goals and setting those visions, which is all I did back in kind of when I first started in the military. So, you know, I've been in the military since 98. I joined the Navy as a helicopter pilot, and I flew helicopters for the Navy. So Commando Helicopter Force, so I was part of that, which was part of the Iraq War. We did the Afghanistan conflict as well. And then I did search and rescue out of Prestwig on the west coast of Scotland. And that in itself was a fascinating job, because you never knew what was coming in next. You never knew what role was going to happen. From pregnant ladies who were having complications on one of the islands to climbers falling off the hills and breaking their legs. So you were just on that call. But I realized very early on that I love flying. I love the dynamicism of it, and I love military flying. But actually, I only had that one string to my bow. I joined the military from, straight from school, straight in as a direct entry pilot. So I worked very, very hard from that.
Can imagine.
Yeah. Goals. And actually that was my goal from a 12-year-old. I wanted to be a pilot in the Navy. I had a family history of naval people. They weren't pilots, but we had a Navy history. So I had that goal set out quite early on. I joined the military, but as I say, very early on, while being a pilot, I thought we had a well-trodden path when we left the military into commercial aviation. And I had no more strings to that bow other than being a pilot. And I thought, you know what, I don't want to go into commercial aviation. I saw all my friends and people ahead of me doing that, and I didn't want to follow in that well-trodden path. So at that point, I quite early on set myself a goal and a target that when I left and I retired, I wouldn't have to, if I didn't need to, work again. So I started looking for that business, that side business that I could run alongside my military career. And that came about with property investing and property developing. And a lot of people think that is hard, and I was juggling. It takes a lot of time, but actually with that well-defined and well-focused goal and the planned out route in order to get there, you've got the passion to do it. A lot of people want to do one of these side jobs and things like that, and all they're focused on is the monetary aspect, not passionate about running the business itself. So I set about starting this business, and it made a little bit of money every year upon year, made a little bit of money. But instead of taking that out and going to splash it on anything that was useless, which is what most people do, just buy useless crap. Obviously, I did go through that phase. I just kept on piling it into the business to the point where when I retired this year, I would technically, if I didn't want to, need to work again. But like I said, I'm so passionate about it because I've developed this and I've become passionate about it. I now want to continue, and we're going to grow that exponentially as we move forward. So it's all about time management. You know, it is about time and attention management because, yes, I was busy deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, but instead of wasting that time, as anybody, you know, military background has been deployed, they will realize that it's periods of intense activity and intensity, but then long periods of boredom where you just sat on your own bed, your own cot bed, your own chair, whatever that may be.
Been there.
Bored. Yeah, exactly. And it's periods of intense boredom. So all I did was refocus my mind and use those for self-education, whether that just be reading self-development books or whether that be researching the next property development I was going into. So it was just utilizing that time. I mean, I bought one building over a sat phone from Afghanistan, a development in Hull. When you used to get the old Paradigm cards, if those remember that, 20 minutes a week you used to get. Yeah. And I bought a development. The process started before I deployed, and it fell through. While I was away, we got notification that the other buyer had dropped out. So I used my 20 minutes for 3 consecutive weeks to set up legal teams and basically bought this building, paid for £110,000 for this building. And once it was redeveloped, it was valued at just shy of 450,000. So that was worth my effort. That was worth my time and effort why? Because I had this crystal clear vision and goal that I wanted to have a business set up alongside my military career, that I did not have to follow that same well-trodden path into commercial aviation. I could, if I wanted, just carry on with my own business.
Rich, what was the purpose behind wanting to deviate from the well-trodden path? Because there's absolutely nothing wrong with becoming a commercial pilot, of course, and it's a well-paid profession. Yeah. It's well regarded. But what made you think, well, hang on a minute, if I just do that, what was the reason why you chose to kind of diversify your thinking and then go on the path?
Yeah. And that's a very good question. In all honesty, Christ, I'm bloody lucky I didn't do that, because you look at where we are now. I would have retired March this year, and now look at the travel sector. Look at that; it's been absolutely shot. But what I saw back at that early time is we're talking back in kind of what 2000. About 2001, 2, 3. So I'd only been in the military like 5 years. But what I saw is everybody was leaving who were kind of 15, 20 years ahead of me. And don't get me wrong. And what happened is they were leaving at 40 years old. They were going into commercial aviation, and 2 or 3 stayed in contact with a lot of them. And what was happening is they're all just bored. It was a mundane job. And now they had, on one hand, you had a very, very good, attractive salary. You had what appeared to be a good lifestyle, but you were working away a lot. And there was little chance of advancement. So that suits some people. Some people are just happy to plod along at that pace of life. But my personality, my character, really, I needed to drive something. I always need to better myself to move to another level. And what I saw with that industry is you go into it, you earn good money, you have that lifestyle, but it doesn't really change for the next 25 years. Then all of a sudden you retire at 65, and that's that. So I made that conscious decision that and it was a battle towards the end, if I'm brutally honest. So not last year and the year before, it was a personal battle with myself, because all of a sudden I was going to take this leap to, yes, I knew the business would sustain me and do well, but I'd always run it alongside of something else. And I had a personal battle of, should I just do it? It's good money. It's an easy, well-trodden path into that sector of commercial aviation. Should I just bloody do it? Yeah. And a very good friend of mine said, if you want to grow the business and take that to another level, you've got to cut that tie with the military. You've got to get rid of that as an option. So completely commit 100% to this growing of the business for the next few years. Cut that tie. And if it doesn't work after 2 or 3 years, potentially you could have that as a plan B. But also don't have this plan B stuck in your head all the time, because if you always think I've got a plan B and I've got a fallback option, will you ever give plan A the 100% attention? So that's where it came from. It was more just seeing others who I thought, I don't want to be just in a job without any form of personal advancement for the next 25 years. As I say, that suits a lot of people, and I'm very, very pleased for them, but I just knew it was never going to suit me.
I massively buy into that, and that to me really demonstrates your entrepreneurial spirit. Because even myself, I've been in situations in the past where I've been I've been employed since I've left the military over the last almost 11 years, and I always kind of felt trapped. I didn't have that much room to move, and that's what I'm sensing from you. It's like, although it's a well trodden, it's well respected, well paid, it's kind of like, it's very linear, isn't it? There's not much. I wouldn't be able to fly a commercial airline, that's for sure, because I haven't the historical sort of experience and training and what have you. But I'm sure once you've flown it 4 or 5 times the same airframe, it's going to become pretty monotonous.
And that's it.
It's the weather, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's the physical act of flying is like driving a car. Yes, you've got a lot more buttons than you do in your bloody standard Ford Fiesta, but it's a hell of a,
Well, I hope so.
yeah, the physical act of aviation is very, very easy. Where the skill comes in is dealing with a problem if it goes wrong. So dealing with those, say, adverse weather conditions, or if something goes wrong with the aircraft, that's where they earn their money.
Yeah.
Of course, you wouldn't wish that upon anybody, and every pilot wishes it never happens to them, because you never want to put yourself in a situation where the only thing that's going to get you out of it is your exceptional skill, because you want that easy life as such. Now, as a result of that, and as a result of the way modern planes and things are built, the chances of that happening are so slim. So actually 99.9% of your time is spent just doing the physical act of flying, which, as I say, if I roll back to somebody driving a car, it becomes very similar. It becomes a learned process. It's your body just does it on autopilot as such. So, as I say, I respect a lot of people who love it, and there's many people who still love that aviation aspect, but I just knew it was never going to drive me to where I wanted to be.
Cool. So I just want to raise a point that you mentioned there about having spoken to your friend about, should I, shouldn't I, run the property alongside the commercial stuff, and the advice was given, well, it's not a good idea to have a plan B in the back of your mind. There's good reason for that, because obviously if there's an option for the mind to slip off to the easy route, it's always going to favor it. But if we use the metaphor of you taking off from HMS Ocean and going to the Al-faw Peninsula, you're fucking taking off and you're going into battle.
Yeah, you
have to literally leave the aircraft carrier. So it's in a sense, you are burning your ships. You're fucking committed. It's on the pedal, and you're taking off. So I just wanted to make that point and stress that although it's good to have some contingency and build some resilience into a plan, I guess, but to not have, that's a potential option, because it can, what's your experience of that in the past? Have you ever done that? And what was your experience around, how your performance?
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's a perfect example, really. I could take the property business now, which I still run and would diversify over the last year. When I had that as an option in the back of my mind, I consciously probably only gave it about the property business, even though that's what I was about to go into full time, probably only gave it about 10% of my effort, my time. But actually, when I made that mental decision to cut the ties, and that simply came with an email to my kind of desk officer, the guy who looked after my career, and said, no, I formally turned down your extension of service, so I want to leave at this date. And by writing that email, it was as if that was a weight lifted off my shoulder. And at that point, I very much diverted 100% of my attention to where I was going. And it really, really does work. I buy into the old adage of burn the boats. And that came from a very, very old historic general when they raided an island. They invaded an island. They said the only way off this, burn the boats. So therefore, the only way off this island is to win the war. So it was that commitment. It would stop anybody turning back, getting on the boats and fleeing. So it takes away that option. The only way off this now is to win the war and take the island. And the adage is, burn the boats to take the island. So I really, really do believe in that. Building in resilience, building in contingencies, building in, fail safes. If one element of it goes wrong, is just common sense and good business acumen. But to have a complete I am scrapping the business there and I'm going to this plan over here, which pays me money, very easy, good lifestyle. That is what you need to get rid of. That's the plan B. Remove that. Concentrate on the business, build in your resilience, as I say, build in those contingencies and those action plans should something go wrong. As I say, that's just good business.
So you say then, because clearly you've got a singular focus here.
Yeah.
There's different things that you're now developing as a business, which I'm aware of, and I'm sure you'll speak into a little bit. But having that singular focus, I would imagine your results or the business, the property business, would have increased once you'd made that decision and sent that email.
Phenomenally increased. Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're phenomenally increased. Like you said, we're diversifying in different areas. So as a business, we want to build a brand is our overall vision. So to build a brand which is Blue Oak, and Blue Oak will transpire into a number of different areas. And what we're bringing with that is we'll set out 3 core values of being open, honest, and ethical. Now, bearing in mind that I've ran this simply as a property business for many, many years. And the property business is a very simple model. You buy a derelict building, redevelop it, refinance the building, so you are getting a lot of your money back out and making a little bit of profit, and then put tenants in. And with that, you've then got an asset base that'll sit there in your company forevermore, or until you decide to sell it. So that's a very, very simple model. But when I decided to team up with a couple of business partners last year, we thought actually there's a few areas that we could go into. So we took Blue Oak into different areas. That was a training and consultancy arm to teach people what we were doing, a training consultancy arm that runs events to bring people together in that community, because being an entrepreneur is quite lonely. When you decide to work for yourself, I've come from an environment in the military where whatever happens, you could knock on somebody's door and there'd be somebody to have a drink with, okay? It's a false kind of friendship.
Yeah.
It's a very superficial friendship. A lot of it's not deep friendship, but at least there's people there to talk to. As I say, the deep friendship in the military, you could probably count on one hand.
Yeah.
Yet there is always somebody there to converse with should you need it, go and have a drink with if you need it. You're working in teams in whatever environments you're used to that team ethos. So if you start working for yourself, actually it can become very lonely. And entrepreneurs are known for being very, very lonely. So with Blue Oak, we created events. Once a month, we'll just bring anybody who wants to come with an entrepreneurial spirit, wants to learn, wants to converse with like-minded people together. That was another arm of the business. We realized that actually people don't operate at their peak performance. And again, coming from an aviation background, we are always taught peak performance. Marginal gains is a term that I love, which came from like David Brailsford and the English cycling team. To constantly improve every little area in your life by 1% will have a collective increase of a huge amount. Yeah. We set up an arm of Blue Oak called Peak Performance, which is designed to show those marginal gains. So by burning those boats last year, and only last year, ran this business for 15 years, burning those boats last year, from that point to this point, we've branched into immediately 3 different arms of a business, all of which are doing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
By committing 100% and not diverting my attention into 2 arenas.
I think that's a really key point to kind of reinforce, is having a singular focus, being very clear on what the outcome is, and burning your ships, not allowing your mind to wander off to other potential options, because results follow where your attention goes. And if your attention's spread across 4 or 5, I'm going to do a bit of this today, and then tomorrow I'm going to do that, it's just not going to work. It's going to slow right down, and potentially not going to achieve any of them.
Yeah, because people are, and I think there's a lot to blame. And again, I talk a lot about this in our peak performance pieces. These days, we're living a social media generation where we become conditioned to want instant gratification. You can turn on your phone, you can turn on Instagram, you can turn on Facebook, and you can find what you want. Now, that might just be looking at other people's lives, the Instagram lifestyle. It's instant gratification. People think they look at overnight millionaires, people, who are seemingly living an Instagram lifestyle, but actually the reality may be completely different behind the scenes, but the perception is there. So people now, and I think this is going to grow into the next generation, you know, of younger people who've grown up not knowing any different than potential Instagram generations. What I'm getting at is it's perceived that you can be an overnight success, that you can click your fingers and you've got it. And what happens now is when you're saying it's about diverting 100% of your attention, what I find happens is people give 100% of attention here, but it lasts for 2 days. They never allow any momentum or any traction to build up. They don't see any success, then they divert it somewhere else. Oh, we'll try something new here. We'll try something new here. So actually you're splitting your energy over 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different pots, and you're never really getting any traction. I mean, you don't plant a seed one day and go out and expect to see a tree the next. You know, you've got to plant the seed, you've got to water it, you've got to nurture it in order for it to build. And people need to focus on an area, be passionate about it. If you're not passionate about that, don't chase it just for the money. Chase it because you're passionate about it. And give it time to nurture. And all of a sudden, once you've done that for an extended period of time, given it that 100% focus, you will get a bit of momentum, you'll get a bit of traction, and all of a sudden you'll start to reap the rewards.
Yeah. It's very common, isn't it, nowadays? I mean, again, I agree with the social media sort of influence. It's so easy to create a perception of you know, perceived reality.
Yeah.
We are very susceptible to influence because we're constantly engaged by it. You know, especially during, well, right now at the time of this being recorded, we're still in kind of lockdown because of the coronavirus situation. So, you know, I don't doubt that a lot of people are turning to social media for connection, you know, inspiration and, you know, education of some sort. So that's gonna be as much of a pandemic as the virus, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, this as you say, the time we record, we're in this lockdown. I think you know, the government, I'd like to think, have thought about the, you know, the mental health challenges with that, because we're being locked into our house where loneliness, like I say, people will turn to social media. The perception of people's lives can be skewed radically, and actually that does have a detrimental mental health problem.
Exactly. So far you've achieved quite a lot. You mentioned you work with or you're looking to help other service personnel.
Yeah.
Something that you're really passionate about, because obviously you've achieved such a great amount alongside, you know, a very fast-paced, fast-flying, shall we say, you know, military career. And you really want to help those people that are in the same situation, because I know from my own experience in the military, I didn't use my time as well as I could have done, and I'm now kicking myself. And I'm to a certain extent behind because I've used all that time up and I can't get it back. But if this is something that somebody's wanting to do for themselves, what was that journey like for you, and what were the specific stages that you went through, just so they've got an idea of what that journey was? How did it begin, and why did you choose property?
So I guess, I mean, why did I begin? Like I said, I wanted to grow a level of passive income. Now, the journey starts, and why property? It's simply because I started looking around at people who work for themselves, created businesses, became successful in business. And what I found I lacked was an idea. I spent years thinking, what have I got? You know, what is it? Am I, you know, at the time, I think, you know, I've just bought myself like a Dyson Hoover, just moved into this new house. And I was like, I'm not the James Dyson. I haven't come up with this idea of a new Dyson vacuum cleaner. And I used to sit for hours racking my brain thinking, what is my idea? And I sat there and I thought, well, until I have an idea, until I conjure something up, I've got nowhere to go. I don't know what to do and where to start. And then really the property element came along because at that point I moved out of the house that I bought, which I owned, and I rented that out. And all of a sudden I was getting another £500 per month on top of the mortgage I had. And I thought, let me look into this. I don't need an idea. I don't need to be an inventor. I don't need to be anything like that. I could, at the moment, I'm deployed a lot. I'm got a lot of disposable income. I'll tell you what, instead of buying that new bloody sports car next time I come back from a 6-month deployment, let's maybe do something else with it. And so what it allowed me to do was get out the mindset of thinking I've got to have an idea, I've got to have an invention, and actually just think, right, I can utilize this money to grow a business in the next 10 years that will pay me forevermore. And that was quite a big mindset shift as well, when I realized I didn't need to be an inventor. I didn't need to be thinking to change the world, to think of, I again spent years walking around, you know, the great inventions, you know, the things that have come out in this, or the great businesses in this kind of the past 20 or 10 years, really, when you look at the likes of Airbnb, Uber, they all have a problem. So I'm fascinated by those. So like Uber, for instance, the chap couldn't get a taxi one evening. So thought, how can I rectify this? Built an app that would create Uber. And that was how that was formed. So he saw a problem, created a solution and solved it. Now that's a very, very specific type of person. You're a creator. Now, and again, Airbnb, you know, all that was very similar sort of thing. He saw a problem that he couldn't book those hotels, created an app, etc., etc. So what I'm getting at there is they were very creative people. They saw problems, thought of a solution, then thought of the problem. Now, I wasn't that person. I would walk around that thing and I'd try and spot problems. I was trying to force the square peg into the round hole. I was trying to look at, well, that doesn't look right. Maybe that's a problem for everybody. Maybe if I invented something to, you know, stop the dishes dripping water when I'm washing them, or some really obscure thing. And I realized that I rapidly realized that wasn't me. I'm not an inventor. So I need to find a business which I can scale without creating something. And I'd say property was it. You know, it's been done before. There's 1,000 people who've done it before me, and there's 1,000 people who have done it before your listeners. So what I mean by that is copy. Okay, it's a business model that can be copied. So don't go and try and reinvent the wheel with a property business. And this is, as soon as I started realizing this, I thought, actually, all I need to do is find the most successful people in this field, read their books, read their literature, whatever they've put out there. A lot of them have written books. A lot of them have got, you know, blogs, whether that be Facebook pages, etc., etc. Read what they did, read how they started, and just copy their journey. And that's all I did, is I started copying. Success leaves clues. Those successful people leave clues along the way. So I'm not inventing anything. I'm simply regurgitating what hundreds of people had done before me. And I realized at that point, that was my route to building a business, where I'd spent a long, long time thinking I've got to create something and solve a problem in the world in order to be successful. And that was completely wrong. But it needed that mindset shift.
Yeah, no, big time. A question for you then, Rich, because obviously what you produce is incredible, you know, over the time that you've been in service, and obviously since you've left, it's obviously been diversifying and growing exponentially. And it's great to see. So in terms of the challenges that you had whilst you were in the services, what can your potential clients, I guess, people that you may work with in the future that are you know, listening to this podcast, that might be, you know, sat in you know, an airframe right now, or you know, somewhere on operations in you know, in a dusty bed space, thinking, oh, you know, I wonder if I can do that myself. What things that you experienced where you had to innovate and overcome whilst you're in your military career? What was unique about you developing that business?
So I mean, firstly, I'd say that if anybody is listening and does want help to look into this industry, then do, you know, look us up. Hopefully, you know, Ross, drop in kind of the social media channels and things like that. But do look me up, because I am keen to develop an entrepreneurial spirit in service leavers, to show all of you that it can be done. Not service leavers, think about it when you join the service, when you leave. And again, when people join the service, they don't think about when they want to leave, because when you join and you're in your early 20s, all you want to do is chase women and drink booze. And that's kind of the, you know, that's the mindset of your typical military person. But do it for a couple of years and then kind of look at your greater future, because your your 35-year-old self will thank you for those decisions you made when you were 25, if you go and invest it properly. So please do reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help anybody in the service in training into getting into this and running that side business. So the things that really I had to get my head around, the biggest one really is it's believing in yourself that you can do it. A lot of people will tell you that you haven't got enough time. A lot of people will tell you that you should be focusing on the role that you're doing, but that's just a job. And as long as you are good at your physical day-to-day job and you have that spare capacity, then use that spare capacity. Arnold Schwarzenegger did a very famous speech where he said, don't believe the naysayers. And I had that a lot. People will criticize you and say that you can't do it. So it's understanding that you can. And the way to believe that you can is simply by educating yourself, by studying the people who've done it before you. By studying those people who've done it before you, by reading, as I say, the success leaves clues, go and read those books, go and read those documents. It allows you to believe that you can do it yourself. As soon as you can believe you can do it yourself, it doesn't matter how many people are telling you that you can't, how many times your boss tells you you can't spend the time researching that, you should be resting. Okay, how many times have I had that? Rich, you can't, as a pilot, we were required to rest so many hours a day. That's fine, I get it. But my rest, I may want to read or do some research on something that is going to grow me. That is my perception of rest. So what I'm getting at is you've got to believe in yourself, educate yourself into a field. And I'm not necessarily saying it has to be property to anybody. Property is a very easy one to do alongside of a military career. Educate yourself in that and reach out to those people who've done it before, because don't try and reinvent the wheel. Okay, we'll give you those stepping stones. And a property business is literally stepping stones. You do one task, complete it well, move on to the next task, complete it well, move on to the next task. And as long as you do those steps in order and don't expect to start on a Monday and be a multimillionaire by the Friday, then you do those stepping stones, then you will achieve given that period of time. And the key for military people is exactly as I said there, it's the disposable income. It's the money that can be saved while deployed. We're deployed a lot, okay? Potentially not as much as we were 5 years ago, but guys are still going away a lot. And when you're away, the general thinking is you'll come back and you'll treat yourself with some material object to make yourself feel better. I'm going to save up while I'm away for 6 months, and I'm going to make myself feel better when I come back by buying that brand new car. Well, that's fine, okay? But material objects won't bring you long-term happiness. They'll bring you that short-term rush of happiness there. Do it once or twice, okay, just to get it out of your system. But then the next time, look at the way you view money. So let's say that car here, which we were going to buy, might cost £50,000, but you can lease it at £600 per month. Okay, so why not use the money that you've saved while you've been deployed to buy an asset like a property that will produce you £600 per month, that all of a sudden you can lease that car with the profits you're making from that property. Yeah. So when you get rid of that car, or you get bored of that car and you dismiss that car, you're still getting the £600 per month. Where had you bought that for 50 grand, you'd then have sold it for 30, you'd have lost 20 on it and you'd have nothing else to show for it. So it's a mental picture of learning education around money. And again, the healthy education around money is something that's critically missing in society in general, because everybody lives hand to mouth. Okay. Yeah. And again, that's a very military kind of thing, is we generally lived hand to mouth because we knew we were going to get paid on the first of the month. And the amount of servicemen who were broke by the second is ridiculous. It is Millionaires Day. At that day on the first, you think you're a millionaire and you go and splash it all. Yeah. So just a healthy education around money is a fantastic thing to have. So again, reach out to me, reach out to the Blue Oak community, and we will certainly help you that. But the earlier you get that, you can still have as many of the toys as you want in your life. But the earlier you get that, kind of philosophy around the use of money, the quicker you will make a huge success of yourself and a business.
That's all about delayed gratification, isn't it? Because 100%. I've done it myself, where I've spent money on something and then, after a short space of time, why do that?
Yeah.
And if you're tied into something, or you put money down, especially into a vehicle, unless it's a classic, it's not accumulate any additional value. It's going to decrease.
Yeah.
So it's a it's a flawed strategy, isn't it? It's I guess what we're talking about there is, because for you had a clear vision, just to kind of reiterate some of the things that you said there, and bring them to the forefront. You had a clear idea from the early stages of your military career that you wanted to have a business. At that point, it was quite general. You didn't know what it was, and you were looking and constantly searching. So I think one of the key things is, if you want a life that your 35-year-old version of you at the age of, say, 25 is going to thank you for, then you need to think about where you want to be at the age of 35 and what you want around you, because otherwise, you've got nothing to look towards. And then, like you were talking about just there, especially for those that are in the military, and this is obviously, I was the polar opposite. I didn't use that time. I didn't leverage that time. You did. So it's about identifying those pockets and having a strategy, and that your strategy might be sticking a couple of waterproof books into the top of your Bergen. So when you're at that holding area for the next 3 days and you're doing, whatever it is, ground training before deploying, you've got 3 days worth of reading, writing, and thinking. Rather than just not doing it and wasting it.
And that's exactly it. It's a lot of people say, I haven't got the time, but it's actually then identifying the time in your day. Like you just said there, perfect example, a single book in the top of your Bergen in a waterproof bag. So when you are sat in a harbour area, or whatever that may be, instead of, yes, you've got to get your head down. Yes, you're tired. Yes, there's a lot to be done. However, you can't tell me there's times when you sit in a bivvy bored, trying to forcing sleep, where you're not necessarily tired, but you're forcing sleep because there's nothing else to do. To read half a dozen pages of a self-education book will pay you tenfold in a few years' time. And very, very shortly, you'll realize how much time you actually have, in your day, that you can grow yourself. That isn't just time which is spent being bored.
So that's your kind of your journey thus far. So let's talk about, now you've mentioned Blue Oak. Now Blue Oak, a great success. I'm involved in your community, and it's great to see that. The value that you and your business partners add to the community is incredible. It's off the chart. I've been in plenty of Facebook groups before, and I can wholeheartedly say that it's one of the better ones that I'm part and parcel of. And the community is based on those values, open, honest, and ethical. Ethics is a huge thing for me. And I won't compromise that. So for anybody who's out there that kind of lives their life by those values, then it's going to be a direct match straight away, especially if you're interested in leading a life much like Rich is, and a lot of his community members that are either already there or working towards it, because everybody's on their journey, aren't they? So what can you do, or what problems does Blue Oak solve at the moment? How can you help those that are listening?
Right. So Blue Oak's main, we do a lot with Facebook, and the reason we moved to that platform as one of our primary platforms is to build a community. So a lot of people, again, business thinking a few years ago was about having a website. Have a website that's your face. That makes you look professional, inverted commas. But the trouble with, that being a business, and that old business model would mean that I need to have the desire to buy a product, then I go looking for it. I look on the website, then I buy it. So it's me understanding everything about that product. And that's kind of a bit of old school thinking. So what we decided to do was, let's bring a group together. Let's bring a group of like-minded people together. So where's the easiest place to do that? Is build a group on Facebook. Yeah. So around the property community, we just built a group. We put the feelers out there that this is what the group was. And the idea behind the group is that we will, for free, there's no ulterior motive, but help everybody. And by having a core of genuine experts, from architects, builders, surveyors, planners, mortgage brokers, people with money, you've got a whole spectrum of everybody that you may come across in that industry. So as a new starter, as somebody who's never done it before, you can enter into that community and ask any question. There is no silly question.
No.
And by asking that question, you will get an open and genuine, honest answer without having to pay for that service, without having to go and seek that service of an architect. You may just be able to ask the question there. So what Blue Oak do there is really provide a group of like-minded people, firstly, of entrepreneurs where we can all help one another at whatever level. And also on the flip side, that's what we're saying for a newbie, but also when you're a little bit more experienced, there are deals floating around there. There are people looking for investment that you might get involved in. So there's a little bit of everything. We are currently just getting involved in a deal which came from our Facebook group of a large building for a development and the build of 21 new houses in the 10 acres it's got. How did that come about? It came about as part of that group.
Yep.
So that's all, that's what the main group is about.
Yep.
Beyond that, we run monthly events. The monthly events are generally held in York, but we're going to start, and York simply because that's where I live, but we're going to start moving those around the country. They typically get between 40 and 100 people in the room. And the reason we hold those events is to bring people together, that social aspect, because actually when you're surrounded by people with the same passion as yourselves, you can feed off each other and grow. And the amount of business that's done in those rooms is phenomenal. So our purpose isn't necessarily a typical business of, here is a product, I'm going to sell that product to make an income. It's a place where we can offer value. We can help everybody grow in their own fields. And actually what will happen is the amount of deals, experience that will naturally flow back to us will grow us faster than selling products to every single one of them. So it's a different way of thinking about business. Yeah. But from anybody out there who wants help, it's a perfect place to start. Come, ask questions, get involved, come to our monthly events, because that's where a lot of education is shared and a lot of deals are done. On the side of Blue Oak, we've also got Peak Performance by Blue Oak, and Peak Performance is another group which is designed to whatever business you're in. So that the previous one, the Property Network, is heavily focused obviously around property development, investment, that side of the business. The other arm is anything, whatever business you're in, whether you are, you work in a nail salon, a hairdresser's, or you're the chief executive of a company. Peak Performance offers a place where you can better yourself, you can better your mindset, your habits, your routines. You can grow as a person, the discipline required to grow and improve yourself by 1% in every one of those areas. And by doing that collectively, you will grow as a person. And let's say, I used the name at the beginning there. Those who have never heard of the fella Dave Brailsford, he first coined the term marginal gains when the British cycling team, go back about 10 years, was useless. We were losing every event. There was just nothing there. And the British cycling employed a fellow called Dave Brailsford who looked at a thing called marginal gains. And he looked at everything down to how the athletes wash their hands, because he said, if you wash them correctly, then you'll not get disease or you'll not get ill. He looked at the level of sleep they were getting, what mattresses they were sleeping on. He was looking at the times that they would train, what shoes they would wear, the insoles in the shoes, every little aspect, every aspect of their bikes, every aspect of their personal life, every aspect of their entire lives was broken down. Yeah. And every one of those aspects was then improved by 1%. And that's it, by 1%. But because there was 100 of them, that 1% improvement across every one of those fields made a collective phenomenal improvement. And then lo and behold, when he took that team to the Olympics, the entire British cycling team wiped the floor and won every single gold medal on the board. And that was purely put down to Dave Brailsford's marginal gains. And nobody had ever really heard of it until then. I think we'd all been doing it in the military by trying to improve ourselves here, there, and everywhere. But once he coined this term marginal gains, it went into businesses, it went into all sorts of other industries. And that's what peak performance is. It's about bringing that marginal gains philosophy, techniques to all of these other industries. Whatever industry you're in, get yourself in peak performance, you will learn something.
Where did you pick up on this? Has Dave written a book about marginal gains? Is there a book called Marginal Gains, or is there?
You know what? He probably has. I've read now a lot of books about it, about peak performance, about growth in that sector. But I loved cycling as a kid. I was around, and then as a young adult in my 20s, that's when he was employed by the British cycling team. And I kind of just love that philosophy. And it's about looking at that philosophy of, he was doing it very much for athletes, but following that, the world saw what it could do. And that's the point, I looked at it to take it into business. Other people have taken it into business and into life in general. You improve your life in general by 1% in every marginal area, whether that be your discipline, whether that be the routine that you do, whether it 1% improvement in your saving, if you're talking about money, 1% improvement in your investments, it collectively, they'll make you as a person a better person. So to be honest, that's an interesting one, because I haven't looked up to see it. I bet Dave Brailsford has written a book, but it's more the kind of strategic level concept I like, rather than the cycling element. I love cycling, that's how I came across them, but it's the concept I love.
Yeah, it's very smart, isn't it? And for Dave and anybody who's in, that sort of level of competition, everything matters, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? With the way that we're developing as a race, and technology and all that kind of stuff, and the things that we can investigate, there's no surprise that I think we're excelling as a human race. Certainly over the last 15, 20 years, things have really ramped up. So that's really cool. There's lots of things there that I think will probably speak out to, those that are currently serving, potentially looking at leading a different life. If you're not, remember what Rich said earlier on, make sure that the 35-year-old version of you, as long as you're not 34, of course, is going to be grateful to you as a 25-year-old, because you started to think, now, what am I going to do? Where am I going to be? And what's that look like? And then, just to reiterate some of the really strong, related points here, because a lot of these have come up naturally, but they're all very, very, they anchor into that phrase, success leaves clues. Clearly, Rich has created success in his life, or however he perceives it, which, for the vast majority of us, that to me looks like a successful, person. The things that he's achieved in his life, the career in the Navy, all of the experiences that he's gained. Make sure you've got a clear idea of where you're going. Don't give yourself too many options, because you're just gonna, you're gonna deplete your energy resources. Burn your ships, or burn your boats, as Rich said. Look for the time that you've got and how you can leverage that. Bang a book in your Bergen, for when you're going away, so you can read in those gaps. Whatever the role that you're in, there is always going to be the opportunity to do that. And then just keep persevering. Follow the people that have already made a success of it. Rich is doing very well for himself. Rich is certainly somebody who I connect with, and once you get inside of his Blue Oak community, you will see that everybody connects with that community, because it's all based on those three values. So is it, just to confirm, Rich, is it Blue Oak Network or Property Network? Is that the name?
On Facebook, it's Blue Oak Property Network. And Blue Oak Property Network and Peak Performance by Blue Oak. But by all means, connect with me on, as I say, other social media platforms. I'm Rich Liddle on Facebook and Instagram. So please connect with me on both of those platforms, and I'm more than happy to help anybody.
Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure, and there's huge amounts of really valuable content there that I'm hoping the listeners are absorbing that, because it's clear that even though initially when you were kind of looking for ideas, you were seemingly sort of uncertain of where you kind of knew where you wanted to go in a general sense, but you didn't know what it was. Key thing is to start that process. So if you want a different life beyond the military, and this is something that I used to say to my subordinates in the military, was, your resettlement starts the day you join the military. So if you haven't started, you need to start now. Even if you did a full career, like for me in the Army, 22 at the time, 24, maybe it's 26 at a push. Unless you've created significant amount of wealth, that's a third of your working life. So the time to start thinking is right now. And I'm sure Richard join me in agreeing with that point. Get ahead of yourself, pick one thing, apply all your energy to it, leverage your time, and get involved with the people that have already, proven the route. And if it's property, Rich is your man. Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Ross, thanks very much. Anytime.
Dude, let's catch up soon. Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. I'll see you all on the next episode.